Neighbourhood Brewing, downtown Penticton, the corner of Westminster and Winnipeg, and the Canucks Young Stars Tournament 2024. Of course, typically at the Wall Center, downtown Vancouver, the historic Wall Center, where you can extend your game night or make it a staycation with the Sekeres price rate. Yeah, it's back at Wall Center. Call the hotel 604-331-1000. Ask for the S&P rate. Some blackout dates apply based on availability. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price, Jacob Lazar hitting switches, conducting things. We got a big show coming up for you with plenty of happenings over the course of the weekend at Young Stars and some reinforcements to this crease. We were waiting on this move. More on that in a second, but training camp later this week here in Penticton, and it's time to turn some of our focus to the big club and some of the big questions with the Vancouver Canucks. And throughout the summer, and you could tell by the amount of wingers they added in free agency, the big mission was to find some guys to play with Elias Pettersson. They think they have quality there in the form of Jake DeBrusk, the free agent winger from Boston who came on over. And now the question, and I think this will be a focus as we go into training camp, Blake, who is going to play with Pettersson and DeBrusk? It's our poll question. You can vote on our X and YouTube channels. We've got 4 options for you there. Connor Garland, Nils Höglander, who I guess is the incumbent, Dakota Joshua, or newcomer Daniel Sprong. Well, first of all, how's your weekend here? Isn't it great being up here?
Oh, it's great.
Watching the football. Went to the game yesterday, playing some golf.
I wish we had started the weekend earlier. I wish we'd come up on Thursday. Duties persisted. Unfortunately, I had Whitecaps to deal with on Saturday. We'll get to that later in the show. But this is our favorite spot. We just love it.
We played our farewell to Randy Houle round on Saturday up at Fairview, and thank you to Rob and everyone at Fairview Mountain. Big Sekeres Price listener, Randy Houle, who's typically taken us out for some golf and some fun when we come up to Penticton. He's moving to the island, so this was our last round with him, and then today we're going to get on up to Incomeep and see longtime Sekeres Price listener Todd Tweedy.
Yes,
the pro up there.
Yes, and it's going to be hot today, so we're looking forward to that.
Hot here.
On the poll question, I'll say this: will probably be the case for Canucks fans as well. You look at those names, and you don't look at them in a vacuum. You're looking at them like, I think there's going to be a lot of people that look at Dakota Joshua and say, no, he's with Connor Garland, and look at Connor Garland and say, no, he's with Dakota Joshua, and I wonder how the coaches are going to look at it. Do they look at it in the same way? Because if I'm just looking at those 4 players in a vacuum, I'm putting Dakota Joshua with those 2 guys.
Yeah.
But do you, and we'll talk about this later too, robbing from one entity of the Canucks to account for another one, do you rob from the third line, which is looking kind of plug and play-ish at times, in order to try to make that second line the best it can very be? But in terms of profile of player, I'm going to say Dakota Joshua.
Yeah, I considered all 4 options, and I think you have cases for all 4. Connor Garland, for example, he's a right shot. They don't have a lot of right shots amongst their forward group. So if you're looking for some balance, you want to put a right shot with Pettersson and DeBrusk, then Garland would seemingly fit. I, like you, look at Joshua and go, boy, the 18 goals in 3/4 of a season, and could you imagine if he played with a better distributing center than Teddy Bluger, which was really his center for the most part of last year.
And a little snarl, too.
Exactly. Yeah. How many goals could Joshua get if he was playing with more offensively inclined players in both positions, but particularly down center of the ice? So I've considered him as well. Höglander, we know, works there from the standpoint of scoring goals. Is that too much ice time for him in a defensive posture? Because that is still something that's a work in progress with the young Swede. But I wound up voting for Daniel Sprong. And I voted for Daniel Sprong just because the goals per minute with this player is terrific. And what a development that would be for the Canucks if they feel like they've got a guy who, okay, he's an imperfect player. Okay, maybe you're not playing him in the late stages of a game when you're nursing a 1-goal lead, but to get more firepower with Pettersson and DeBrusk, I dared to dream how much output that could create for the Canucks second line, because, part of this question, I think, also may revolve around who's going to play with Miller and Besser.
Well, right. And also to arrive, who's the matchup center? because you can't have Daniel Sprong on the matchup line.
No.
So if you plan on using JT Miller in a matchup role in the other team's best line, well, then, yeah, maybe Daniel Sprong is with Elias Pettersson. But if it's the other way, the guy that has the more defensive chops, if it's Elias Pettersson, then you put Daniel Sprong maybe with JT Miller to try to get some success there. The thing I'd be tempted, though, if I'm Rick Tocchet, is I would want to get Elias Pettersson going early. I would want him untethered and without some responsibility.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm tempted to say, no, you're not going to be the matchup guy to start.
Right.
Not because you can't, but I just don't want you worrying about that and having to focus on the tougher matchups.
I'm with you. Last year ended with a bad taste in Pettersson's mouth. It also ended with that very awkward media session where he detailed knee inflammation as one of the reasons why he was held back in the second season. Live show, outdoor environment. Thank you, sir. Lock the car.
He looked guilty.
Yeah. But with, Rick Tocchet chalking it up to tendonitis, and effectively this season begins with two key Vancouver Canucks who are effectively being told, these are things you're going to have to play through, gentlemen. This is what being a superstar or a star in the NHL is about, is pushing through and playing through those knocks, that discomfort, and in fact, all the way up to pain. Let's get to our top story. It's brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighbourhood Brewing, Yellow Dog Spirits, Foolish Winery. We were waiting for another shoe to drop, and sure enough, goaltending reinforcements come in the form of a professional tryout for Dylan Ferguson, Lanceville, British Columbia's Dylan Ferguson. He had a outstanding junior hockey career with the Kamloops Blazers. He's a Vegas Golden Knights draft pick. He went to the famed Notre Dame school in Saskatchewan earlier in his hockey life. And you may remember, Blake, that once upon a time, the Vegas Golden Knights got into all sorts of trouble in the crease, had to go down and call up young Ferguson to make his NHL debut in 2017-2018 when they were, I think it was 4 goaltenders who got hurt for Vegas that season.
Did you feel bad for them at that point?
No, not so much. He's also played a couple of games with the Ottawa Senators. That happened in 22-23, and he spent last year with Dynamo Minsk in the KHL. So a couple of questions here, and should be noted, we are finally going to get further word on Thatcher Demko from Canucks management. They are slated to speak Wednesday at 4 p.m. So that will be because everywhere we've gone in this town for the last 48 hours, what's up with Demko? What's up with Demko? Is Demko going to be ready for camp? Is he going to be ready for preseason? What about the start of the regular season? We will know more about Thatcher Demko at 4 p.m. on Wednesday.
They are on the ice here in Penticton for main camp on Thursday. So Wednesday at 4 p.m. is after physicals, just in case that is one last bit of evidence that they needed to sort of get, a timeline in their own minds as to when he'll be back. But this move is, and this is not a criticism of the move at all. This is a move that is basically using this player as a go-between for the next week until they determine exactly where they land. He's another body to shoot pucks at in camp here, where they traditionally have 3 groups and want a couple of goalies in each group for the purposes of drills. And if Thatcher Demko is not able to be on the ice, even in that capacity, then, they need somebody else. And again, that's a mutual usury thing here, because Dylan Ferguson gets to audition for everybody on the PTO, and he gets to be in an NHL environment. So he's okay with that. The Canucks are okay with it. It costs nobody anything. And it makes a lot of sense. We'll see how much he's used. Mm-hmm. And I don't mind his stats, but you can pour over his stats all you want. We'll see if it's purely training camp fodder, Dylan Ferguson, or if they're actually going to need to look to him as a possibility if they have to go, 4 or 5 weeks out of the start of the season without Thatcher Demko.
Mm-hmm. What does this mean for the pursuit of Kevin Lankinen? Do you think this ends all Lankinen discussion here?
No, I think what they've done here is they've said to the Lankinen camp, we're still interested, but we're not going to play chicken with you here. We've got another body.
They have been playing chicken.
Right, but in that game because they're not desperate to fill their spot for training camp. They're still going to double back on it.
So now it becomes Lankinen at our price or no Lankinen.
Right.
Or I guess they might argue it was always going to be that.
But they can buy themselves another week and a half of diagnoses of Thatcher Demko, knowing that they're going to be okay. And the truth of the matter is, if Kevin Lankinen was going to sign somewhere else, I think he probably would have signed that deal by now. So I think Lankinen remains an option if they are convinced that Thatcher Demko is not ready.
Grab your tickets for Cask and Keg in Oliver. Wine Capital Weekend this Saturday, September 21st. Get your Yellow Dog Beverage Company fix with samples from Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighbourhood Brewing, Yellow Dog Spirits, and a lot of other great breweries.
If you're coming up for the training camp, might as well go check that out too.
Absolutely. And of course, you want to stop by here at Neighbourhood. The food is fantastic, as is the drink. And you want to head down to Yellow Dog, 1 block away for the dog park patio.
Yes. And
because the dogs are so adorable.
If you're not coming up for training camp, but you're coming up to Penticton, say in the springtime or in the wintertime, Yellow Dog will be ready in all of its grandeur. More on that a little later.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the scenario that we now have to begin discussing is Thatcher Demko not ready for the start of the season. What does that mean in terms of setting the roster? What does that mean salary cap implication wise? But Blake, are you starting to wrap your head around the possibility that Jiri Patera is your backup goaltender on opening night against the Flames?
And Jiri Patera is probably pulling down a start or two in October. I don't think that's a hot take. I think Jiri Patera, get ready. He's going to be in goal for the Vancouver Canucks in the month of October.
So that means two things. Either they are going to put Demko and Sheelovs as the two goaltenders when they set the roster, submit the roster to the National Hockey League. And of course, that will be the roster where you're trying to get as close to the upper limit of the cap as you can. Then remember, there is a distinction between setting the roster and setting the opening night lineup. And we have been taught many of things about this over the years, including way back in the Gillis days where the opening night roster, you remember that? They would set the NHL roster. People would lose their minds. How did this guy make it? This guy did. And then sure enough, through all these roster machinations, the lineup looked an awful lot like we thought it would.
You got to be under the cap for the opening of the NHL season, but not for your opening night.
So the question becomes, is it just Demko and Sheelovs on the opening night roster? They make a roster move following sending that in for the NHL, where Demko is placed on injured reserve, where Jiri Patera is effectively called up, and then Sheelovs and Demko are your starters. Or do they carry three goaltenders when setting that opening night, or when setting the roster with the NHL? And that would probably have implications, I would think, for defenseman Mark Freeman. He's probably the last guy on the roster, as you said it now. I'm thinking 13 forwards and 8 defensemen with Juleson and Friedman, and one of Oman DiGiuseppe, maybe Archie Baines as your 13th forward. So all those guys, all those bubble names could be affected if you're keeping three goaltenders.
Yeah, I think they would keep three goalies if they are of the mind that Demko is 2 weeks away. But the minute it gets to 4 or 5, then you're starting to get close to LTIR level. I mean, it's 9 games. I mean, if you think he's going to be 5 weeks away, that's LTIR.
Well, none of the reporting right now suggests it's going to be that long term. We're talking more. Well, you say 4 or 5 weeks. You mean from now?
No, I meant from the start of the
season. Yeah. So none of the reporting is yet that dire that you're not looking at Thatcher Demko in the first month. Again, we're going to know more on Wednesday, but needless to say, there's been enough consternation, and making a move like adding a goaltender on a PTO suggests that there's enough worry, there's enough concern about the goaltender that he's going to be unable to participate in some, if not all, of training camp and preseason. And then you get to a scenario of, okay, if he misses all that time, how far is he behind when the puck drops for real?
Well, that's the thing is, there's the health component and there's the ready component.
Right.
And a month can go, like 4 to 5 weeks happens in the blink of an eye. It really does. Like this, it's not crazy to think that he starts the first week of November after all of that. But we really don't know. I mean, this has been, and this is obviously the kind of
fact
injury.
They haven't talked about it. That fuels a little concern.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Like if Demko is great, you've said this, many times before on this show. If you feel the player's going to be ready, or the player's going to be ready, or it is mostly tracking towards the player's going to be ready, you come out and say it.
Yeah.
They haven't said it.
You don't have to give exact dates of when he is back, but if you really truly are not that concerned, you could communicate along those lines, and they haven't really gone out of their way to do that just yet. So I'm of the mind this might, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's that grave an injury, but they're goaltenders. They need to be perfect in order to put them in, because it is only October.
Yes.
You can be less than perfect, and we saw that in the playoffs because you just have to be.
Yeah, and then
but there's no point in putting an imperfect goalie in October.
Well, and then the next question becomes, how do you look in October? Of course, they got off to the great start last year. That really fueled a lot of the momentum with the team. It really fueled the vibes in the market. By the third week of the season, Rogers Arena seemingly was back to being that fun environment, hopeful, optimistic fans that were on the edge of their seat and cheering on their Canucks and feeling great about the team for the first time in an awfully long while. So you got off to the great start last year. That was part of your formula for success in getting back to the Stanley Cup playoffs. And you have to consider, if it's an uneven October, if it's a 500 October, is there ground to make up? Yeah. In the subsequent
500 would be okay. I think about the
Oilers.
What are they, 2-9-1 last year?
Whatever they were.
Would the Canucks be able to come out of that 2-9-1
I'm not sure of that hole.
Is there a 16-game win streak in the Vancouver Canucks?
I was just going to say, they got out of the hole because they reeled off, 17 in a row, whatever it was.
And then won another 8 in a row at another stage. And they still didn't win the division.
With two of the best players on the planet. I'm not sure the Canucks are... Put it this way, you certainly don't want to put yourself in a scenario where you need win streaks like that to get
back. But
back
if you're 5-4 after 9 games and you're in the hunt and you get Demko back there, I think I think you're fine.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. The Canucks prospects have really showed off here in Penticton through 2 games of the Young Stars tournament. They win 2-0 over Edmonton on Friday. They double back. They fall behind yesterday, Sunday, to the Winnipeg Jets prospects, and then come storming back for a 4-2 victory. So, opportunity later this afternoon against the Flames prospects to complete a perfect 3-0 record here at the Young Stars. The Friday game was highlighted by the top line of Atu Ratu, Arshdeep Bains, and Jonathan Lekramaki. They are held off the score sheet, but by every account, they were an absolutely dominant line on Friday with all 3 guys, all 3 of whom you can still consider a prospect. I know Bain's a little older and has played some NHL games. Ratu has as well, but all 3 of these guys are firmly still prospects. And we were at the neighborhood section at the South Okanagan Event Center yesterday for the game. And I thought early on, Jonathan Lekramaki looked pretty darn good. He was hounding the puck. You can see how quickly he changes direction. He's got great agility, dexterity. His movements look NHL movement. And of course, he possesses a terrific shot. As the game went on yesterday, though, it wasn't really that big line. It was more supporting cast guys who stepped up and played well.
Sasson and Romani had good moments, but Merle Ulrichsen scored a great goal, the 6'6" winger. Good performances from some guys that we have highlighted on the show already, but didn't have as high expectation. In terms of the style, I'll say this about Lekramaki, in different position, obviously, but there are elements of Elias Pettersson in his movements.
A little bit.
And I'm not setting the expectations for a 100-point player here, but I'm saying he's, just avoid a disaster there. He's in the style, in the vein of Elias Pettersson, and that's kind of exciting to see that you've got a player that's got that sort of energy to him. So we'll see. I'm still not predicting anything crazy. I know we've had listeners suggest that they might give him the old 8-game, 9-game look. I don't think so. I don't think it's going to happen.
No, I don't think so.
But it's he hasn't set his timeline back, which is great.
Could be a little gusty here in Penticton.
Live show.
Did you see how calmly Blake Price handled that? Huh?
He's the ultimate
television
pro.
broadcast professional, barely even batted an eyelash as a light came tumbling down in front of him. Poor Jacob over here. Yeah, poor Jacob over here. Wow, there was some panic. Not going to lie. Anyways, is it in a better place now?
We're good.
And
And I've reinforced it.
You've
Got a
reinforced
backpack
it?
weighing it down,
Okay.
so we're good.
Are we putting you on E's and O's for tomorrow?
You can if you'd
Okay.
like. That's fair.
Since we talked about Ulrichsen, do we want to play the Ulrichsen clip here first, Jacob? Manny Malhotra, of course, head coach of the Abbotsford Canucks. He's out here being the steward with the young stars. And Coach Malhotra had a thing or two to say about the huge Swede, Ulrichsen, who scored, as Blake mentioned, that beautiful goal.
Obviously, today was the better of his two games. Last game, he had some quality touches, but kind of felt his way through the game, whereas today, especially towards the second half of that game, he really started to use his size really well, played like a true power forward, and obviously taking pucks to the net when you're a big man has its benefits, and he was able to finish.
Yeah.
And look, there's been a big development with this big man, because when the Canucks took him in the 4th round of the 2023 entry draft, 107th overall, like a lot of 18-year-olds, he was skinny. I mean, he was 6'6". I believe the weight was listed at 214 at the time. He's up more than 20 pounds now. So this is a unicorn in the Canucks system in terms of they don't have anybody 6'6" and 240 pounds skating in the forward ranks.
No.
Not on the NHL club, not on the AHL club, and other than this guy, not on the reserve list, not in the system. So he's going to be a fun guy to track here, because if he goes out and has an awesome OHL season, suddenly you're looking at a guy who may already have outperformed his draft position, but would definitely be outperforming the draft position and getting some of that upwards momentum helium, much like we saw with Hunter Brzustevich after his draft plus 1 year.
And what have we seen from this management group with the advice of the coach in their ear? We've seen a lot of big strapping dudes, mostly on the blue line. It seems to be their blue line jam. But you wonder if that starts to leak into the forward set as well, because it's not a massive strapping forward set.
Nope.
Joshua and Heinen have certainly fortified, but this would be, I think, up their alley for sure.
Elias Pettersson, the defenseman, has also been a focus here. And look, if he makes the National Hockey League, I think he's going to be a fan favorite, because he plays a sort of in-your-face snarl game that endears himself to fans. Let's hear from Coach Malhotra again, this time on EPD.
Offensively, it's always nice when you can contribute and score goals, but I think for Petey, one of his best qualities is he knows who he is as a defenseman, and he's been quite physical. Made some quality first touches, first exit passes on breakout, and that's going to be one of his main focuses going into main camp, is that he has to play his game, be physical, and be smart with the puck.
Play within your limitations, basically.
Yeah, and that's good. They've got other players that can be forward-thinking defensemen, if you will.
Yep.
And he doesn't need to be that. And you know what? He'll have other guys, depending on when he makes his Vancouver Canucks debut, guys like a Carson Soucy, who are in the same template there, that you want that first pass, you want to be able to aid the breakout, but then you're not joining the breakout. And the Canucks need to be grooming guys like that, and EPD is certainly a guy to add to the quiver.
Around the National Hockey League, we talked about this story on Friday, but it has finally happened. Sidney Crosby and the Pittsburgh Penguins have gotten together on a contract extension, and believe it or not, it's going to pay him $8.7 million against the cap for the 2 subsequent years after this one. Of course, he was extension eligible this summer. I was listening to Elliot Friedman's podcast on the drive up here, and he noted that Sidney was going to do right by the franchise and by the salary cap. He wasn't going to take every single dollar available to him, because as we discussed on Friday, coming off the year he just had, you could easily call him still a top 10 player in the National Hockey League, and top 10 players in the National Hockey League are now well north of $10 million per year. Sidney, in the later stages of his career, now 37, takes the $8.7 million, which means this is what, 19 consecutive
19 straight seasons
Yeah.
of making 8.7 on the cap.
Yeah.
It's astonishing.
20
and
seasons deep, 19 of them at 8.7.
And you can imagine there's guys in the NHLPA who are rolling their eyes a little bit, going, come on, you got to raise the ceiling a little bit. You got to toe the line, do what you can. But there's also GMs around the league going, thank you.
Yes.
You get that if I pay you market value, I can't pay everybody else.
And I think this is obviously a little bit of exceptional circumstances, right? Like you don't get 2 decades, of one player in the same market wearing the same jersey. And of course, Sidney is doing his part here to see if the Penguins can redeploy the money he left on the table to make them more.
But it's not an ornamental salary. Like the guy's elite still. He could have commanded $12 million over 2 rounds.
What did you tell me that somebody calculated that Sidney has left perhaps as much as $50 million on the table during the course of his NHL career?
Because he had an initial 5-year deal at 8.7. And at that point, that was market value perhaps then.
Oh, for sure.
The next 12, not so much.
Yeah.
So it's,
especially since there are not a ton of players in the National Hockey League that are big gate attractions home and away. He is one of them, right?
Yeah.
Like he sells tickets.
Yeah.
He sells tickets in his market. He sells tickets around the National Hockey League. So yeah, Crosby with the Pens. I mean, this, as we discussed Friday, we'll see where this goes. If it's another season that ends without a playoff spot, is he still going to be happy to keep on keeping on with the Pens? Is there ever going to come a day where, like Gretzky before him and most of the superstar players, he matriculates to a second team? But for right now, Sidney Crosby, a Penguin, and this extension to keep him in Pittsburgh. 2 years on the extension, 3 more years left on the contract for Sidney Crosby. Also want to bring up this name because the Anaheim Ducks are going to be a pretty interesting team to watch this year. Not in terms of wins and losses. We still think the rebuild is on down there in Orange County. But there has been talk about a John Gibson trade for some time. There has been talk about a Trevor Sekeres trade because he's not exactly Pat Verbeek's cup of tea, or they feel they have enough depth of young forward that they can move off Sekeres. Cam Fowler's name is now squarely on the trade targets board that our friend Frank Saravelli, I'm sure, will debut here coming up in the weeks ahead. He's played his whole career with Anaheim, 32 years old now. He's got 2 more years at $6.5 million. The Ducks are apparently going to cut some of his playing time to give some of their young defensemen a chance. And Fowler has acknowledged to Eric Stevens of The Athletic down there in California that, yes, his career is in a phase now where he is going to have to leave Anaheim. He apparently has a 4-team trade list, but there is speculation whether other contending teams are going to be able to get in the mix for Cam Fowler as this season goes along. And of course, the Vancouver Canucks with a top 4 need. He's a lefty, not a righty, Fowler.
Yeah.
But don't be surprised if you hear Cam Fowler's name connected here with the Canucks and connected to other contending teams in the near future, because this looks like a trade that could happen at any time as opposed to a deadline situation. In fact, it's kind of in Anaheim's interest to get Fowler moved quickly, lest he suffer an injury, and all of a sudden you're looking at a diminished asset by the deadline.
So a couple names that we'll discuss today: Cam Fowler, Rasmus Anderson. 2 different prices, but you're getting a much younger right side guy in Anderson versus an older left shot guy. You have to see what those prices look like side by each to see which story you'd like to shop in more. Fowler trips over himself and gets 40 points. He doesn't even have to try. So it's, he doesn't get the acclaim that he once did, but it's an option for the Canucks and for somebody else perhaps going forward as well.
I'm sorry, I was just a little distracted.
Did you get a parking ticket just
The
now?
bylaw officer
Yeah,
has just gone by. I believe I have time in the meter. I certainly fed the meter.
I think he just marked it as I got to circle back on
Yeah,
this
Yeah.
guy.
I think I'm on the
Matt, if you have any coins, I can run over there.
I was going to say, Jacob, I was damn near going to throw you the keys and say there are quarters in the center console. Go feed the meter.
We've had ourselves an opening segment here.
Yeah.
Trucks, motorcycles,
But that's the
falling
fun.
lights.
It's the fun of being outdoors on location.
Right.
It's just,
And
it's a
bylaw
special
officers.
thing.
Yeah.
Well, when he was crossing the street, I was like, that's a cop. And then all of a sudden I saw the bylaw across the chest and I went, uh-oh.
I think you could expense that ticket. That's a business expense.
You think so?
Yeah.
The difference between Anderson and Fowler, not just the lefty-righty thing, Anderson's nearly $2 million cheaper, too.
Yeah.
Like, if
The price is
Rasmus
gonna be high.
Anderson
Yeah.
gets moved, particularly if he gets moved early in the year, boy, that's a sun, moon, and stars return, I think,
Probably.
for Calgary. You just, because the other thing, he's got snarl, like he's got size.
Yeah.
Anderson, he can play with the puck. So, yes, that is a defenseman that I think is going to generate a lot of interest amongst playoff teams. And here's the bylaw officer.
We're
back.
getting a play-by-play.
Sir, we have changed. We're about to feed the meter. Let's get to our menu. It is brought to you by Greta. Greta is a fantastic.
We've never had this before. The bylaw officer is camping out beside Matt's car
Okay, Jacob, you're going to have
in
to.
order to get him a ticket in
There you
time,
go.
just as it
There you go.
expires.
No. Before he takes the photo.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, gosh. Look at this. All right. So, menu brought to you by our friends at Greta. A fantastic spot to catch the game, to go pregame, to go postgame, the fun during the game, of course. The arcade there, make it a game night at Greta at 50 West Cordova or at gretabar.com. And Jacob was successful in saving me the ticket.
Yeah, it looks like he was.
That is fantastic work by Jacob Lazar, hitting switches, filling with bylaws.
I think this goes in E's and O's for tomorrow, by the way.
Oh, how could it not? How could it
The
not?
omission of inserting a
Oh
coin.
my gosh. And I thought, and I was pretty sure too. I was like, I think I have enough time to get us through the end of the show. All right. Bet365 bets of the day. This segment brought to you by Bet365, proud partner of Sekeres and Price. We're absolutely delighted to be working with them again this year. Blake, how about this? NFL underdogs of 6 or more points are 8-0 against the spread through 2 weeks of the NFL season. And they're covering the spread by a significant margin. It's the best start for big dogs in NFL history. Now, taking points, usually a pretty good idea in the early going of an NFL season when we're trying to figure out who's good, who's not. A lot of these betting lines right now are being set by the public perception of teams, or in some cases just the size of the fan base. If you take a look at Dallas being a big favorite against New Orleans yesterday, getting their tail kicked. It doesn't qualify as a big dog. It's a little short, but you're getting 5.5 points with Atlanta tonight against Philly, and I'm going to go there on Monday Night Football.
I'm not here tomorrow, so I'm going to look ahead to the Wednesday match for the Vancouver Whitecaps as they take on Houston. And I don't know if they missed the game or something, but this Scottish duo of Ryan Gauld and Stuart Armstrong looks pretty darn interesting. I doubt Armstrong starts the match, but he'll get more minutes than he did. And Ryan Gauld is a plus 300 anytime goal scorer. He's usually much higher. It's a road game, so it drops. The odds are better for you there, but I'll take that plus 300 on Ryan Gauld.
Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code VANBONUS when opening that account. It occurred to me I didn't actually run down who's on the show in the menu.
You got so distracted.
Distracted.
You just talked about Greta. That's it. Yeah.
So Dave Hall of Canucks Army is going to join us. He has taken in everything here at Young Stars this weekend with his reviews. Ryan Pinder of Afterburner and Barn Burner in Calgary. Ryan's got some history here in the Penticton market. We talk about Andrei Kuzmenko. We talk about some of the prospects the Canucks shipped to the Flames last year. Certainly outpouring for Johnny Gaudreau in that community, and the availability of Rasmus Anderson, and then Melinda Coghill, co-founder here of Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery, and Yellow Dog Spirits. It's all coming up from Neighbourhood, the corner of Winnipeg and Westminster in downtown Penticton. Dave Hall coming up next.
Normally when we talk about Greta Bar YVR, we're telling you make it a game night at Greta, and we're talking about hockey. Of course, we're not quite yet at hockey season, but game night can mean whatever it means, and that could mean soccer or football game to watch on the screen, or your own games, because the arcade is half the fun at Greta Bar YVR. Make it your game night at 50 West Cordova. And of course, great food and drink specials. And you can also make it a late game night, as they're open late every single night. So make it a late game night, your game night at Greta Bar YVR, 50 West Cordova.
Sekeres and Price, we've left behind the historic Wall Center for today's show. We are at Neighbourhood, downtown Penticton, at the Young Stars tournament. Joining us tableside from Canucks Army is Dave Hall. Presentation of Mr. Lube, Mr. Lube Tires. Change your oil, change your wipers. Event is on now. Visit MrLube.com. Download your coupon for a free pair of Goodyear hybrid wiper blades with any oil change, on for a limited time only at Mr. Lube, 18 Lower Mainland locations. Good to finally meet you in person, buddy. It's been a fun weekend hanging out. I know you've been all over this Young Stars tournament. So, first time here. What are your thoughts?
It's hard not to love it, right? It's been a great weekend. Sun is shining, not too hot, which is my kind of weather. It's still break out the shorts and flip flops, but it's not boiling out. So it's been great. I've been a bit of a tourist all week, and you kind of get to check out some hockey and then go tour the town. So it's been a great weekend.
Lekramacky was the fascination going in, right? Like all eyes on Jonathan Lekramacky. You and I were talking yesterday after the game against Winnipeg. Boy, I thought he was really active early. You can tell there's great change of direction there, agility, dexterity. Like he looks like he's got a terrific toolkit. I thought he was hounding pucks early, and then sort of when it wasn't happening for him, faded a little, but he sounded like he was great on Friday. Your review on the Canucks first rounder.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I thought in both games, there's a bit of a tale of two games. I thought Friday night, as sort of expected, as we know, Edmonton wasn't the strongest of teams coming into the tournament. So on Friday night, that top line of Atu Ratu, Archie Bains, and Jonathan Lekramacky just dominated. It might have been one of the best performances without actually producing a point.
Yeah,
you'll see
2 posts, though, right?
Yeah,
yes.
2 posts, and each of them could have had at least 3 points. It was just one of those nights. They were hounding all night. They were controlling majority of the play for the night. But then last night, as you mentioned, he had moments.
Yep.
He always, I think that's one thing that will stay true all year. He'll always have his moments. But you could tell last night against a bit of a tougher competition that it just wasn't all clicking, and that could be said with the whole trio. I thought they had their moments, but definitely weren't as dominant as you'd like.
But it's nice to see performances from guys, and we say this all the time about this tournament. Just show me flashes, and you got flashes, and you got flashes for more than those guys too. I thought in both games now, Max Sasson has shown like a guy that should be performing like this at this level. He's one of the older guys. He's got some experience, and it looked like he was pushing guys around a little bit.
Absolutely. And, I'm a little bit guilty for not hyping him up enough, because at this point I've seen a lot of him, and I'm, a pretty vocal Max Sasson enthusiast.
How are you?
And so, at this point, as you mentioned, 24 years old coming into the Young Stars tournament, I almost just expect him to stand out. He does everything the right way. He skates well, and it's noticeable out there. Like when he's on the ice and he grabs the puck and he's going up the rush, you can tell it's him. He's got great speed. He works hard. He doesn't take a shift off. And it's been nice because he's been with younger players, and he has a tendency of, picking them up, elevating them. And you can see it. And so, yeah, he's been as advertised, but I'm also not very surprised as we said, he's 24. So.
Max Sasson or Atu Ratu, the two centermen of interest here. Who is more likely to play a Vancouver Canucks game this year, Dave?
Well, it's $1 million question. I think it's a little bit difficult because they both just bring 2 completely different skill sets, right? So with Ratu, you love his game. I thought he played I thought he was the best player on Friday night. He was all over the ice. His vision was incredible. He was finding, like, Karamäki should have scored 3 goals, but Aatu Räty was pretty much the reason for that for most of them. He was finding them all night. So when he's at his best, he's a fantastic player. The issue is I don't think he's a bottom, like right now, you're not putting him in the bottom 6. No. If you're going to be putting up Räty, it's going to be maybe not first line, but somewhere in the middle 6. And it remains to be seen if it's going to be up the middle or on the wing. So
you're a big he should play wing in the NHL.
From what
guy.
I saw, it's tough because he's really good at faceoffs. He's good two-way. I just don't know if the skating is up to par. It's as it was last year. It's improved. You can tell it's been improved, but I still just don't know if he's going to be doing it again. Almost even this weekend, looked great on Friday. Not so much yesterday, and that was kind of the tale of last season. Where,
but then God forbid, guys, what if there's a Pettersson or JT Miller injury? Are you really just going to elevate Hugh Suter?
Yeah.
Are you better served bringing in another skill guy to try to stem the tide for however long?
Yeah, and that's where it comes in. So if there is injuries, I do on the top 6, I do believe Aatu Räty could come in over Sasson because I don't think Max Sasson is going to be playing top 6. So it's the exact opposite where. Yeah. But that's why I think Max Sasson might actually play before Räty, because I think there's going to be more opportunity in that 4th line role, maybe 3rd line role, but definitely 4th line role. And he plays the talking type of hockey that I think.
Well, the one thing I noticed about him last night, Dave, Räty, that is you and people have talked about the defensive acumen since he was acquired from the Islanders. There were several times yesterday where I went, oh, he's in pretty good defensive position. He helped break up that play. But it seemed to me like he plays very shallow. Like he doesn't want to get too deep in the offensive zone. And I wonder if that's to compensate for the lack of like traditional foot speed, that I might as well just play a little further shaded on the defensive side of the puck because I don't have the recovery speed if I do get caught. Yeah. Is that fair?
I think that's fair. And also one thing to note is even talking to him this week, he took last year the move to the wing as a bit of a shock. He told us that he's never played wing. And so you almost wonder if it's kind of in his head. He's a little mixed up of, what he should be doing. And, so maybe it's almost an identity thing,
Yeah. Well, it happens with some positions, right? Like you move shortstops to second base. They take it as an ego blow. Yeah, you move some centers to wing. They take it as a bit of
he's saying all the right things though, too. I do like what he is saying in terms of, what he's messaging to the media. He sounds like a guy that, he's an old 21. He's 21 still, I believe, isn't he?
Almost 20. Yeah, he'll be 22 in November, I believe.
But he feels older than that even, right? He's rattled around
a lot of pro games for his age.
Yeah, exactly. So it feels like he should be further along, but his age tells you, have some patience. But it sounds like he's also running out of patience, and that he, not with the organization, but with himself, that he wants to be better. He wants to crack through. And again, those are idle words until you actually execute and become the player that you think yourself to be. But I like that he's at least in the same mindset as a lot of fans and maybe even the organization is you got to start showing it here, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's a great point too. I think we all need to step back and always remember that he is only 21. As you mentioned, it almost seems like he's that old grizzled veteran that shouldn't be at the Young Stars.
He seems like an R.C. Baines kind of 24 guy,
He's got a long road ahead of him, and there's still games. We just need to see it on a consistent basis. And I think there is an opportunity for him to do it this year. I think Manny Malhotra is going to put him in that spot to thrive. I think he's going to be moved back to the wing, up the middle. And I think the addition of Manny Malhotra, I believe, is actually going to be a good thing for his development this year. He's going to give him a lot of pointers. I mean, there's no better person to give you pointers at the center position than Manny Malhotra. So I think it is a good step for his development, and we'll see if it works out.
And Manny wasn't fast either, so exactly. He can teach him some efficiencies perhaps on how to make it work.
No, I think he could be the perfect coach for this profile of player. Arshdeep Bains, the gambit for him, I think, Dave, in this tournament, but really more so in training camp and preseason, is: can you leapfrog Oman? Can you leapfrog Di Giuseppe? Maybe even Carlson, if Carlson's still there, and make a bid to be the 13th forward, or at least make a bid to be the first guy called up if there's an injury? What have you seen from Bains, and what do you think? How do you think he can do here? Because he's going to main camp and he's playing preseason games, so this isn't the last we're seeing of Arshdeep Bains, unlike some of these players who will be, sent back to their junior clubs.
Yeah, and all eyes are on him, right? He is that guy that now looking into next week, he is the guy that you are. All eyes will be on him. What can he do? Can he fit in like he did at Young Stars? Because so far he's looked great. I thought last night, no worries about Friday's game. That line was just dominant all game, and he was very much a part of that. Last night, or yesterday afternoon rather. Little bit as with the whole team, there was some very unconceded giveaways that I wasn't too happy about. But one thing I really liked about him yesterday specifically is they were hemmed in. The first period was a write-off. The entire team was just getting dominated for most of the period. And then in the second period, that top line comes out, starts the period, and you could tell Archie Baines was trying to set the tone. He was grinding in the corners. He was hitting guys. He was just doing his part to try to elevate the team, and you could tell that he was trying to be that veteran leader for them. So I do love that from a guy like him, and I think ultimately I think he could. He's quick. He works hard. He did everything right at the AHL level. It just didn't seem to really translate at the NHL level last year. But with that said, that seems
small sample. I mean, the first game was great, and then there were some,
that's been a consistent trend in his whole career. If you look at how his career has gone, every single time he gets a little sniff, doesn't really translate right away, but then he takes that experience into the summer, knows what he has to work on, and delivers the next year. He's done that every year. He even, like last year's a perfect example at the AHL level. And so who knows, maybe he could surprise. He had a great summer perhaps, and he comes in and surprises in camp.
3 letters, EPD. Rambunctious player, Elias Pettersson, and he looks like he wants to play for the Vancouver Canucks. He's probably not going to get the chance for a while, but he's fun to watch, in a non-skilled defenseman kind of way.
Yeah. Oh, instant fan favorite. I loved it. First game on Friday, his first debut basically with most of the fans. Obviously had a short stint in AHL last year. Comes out first shift, huge hit at the blue line.
Yeah.
And it's just patented EPD kind of stuff. And he's come as advertised. Just mean, gritty, skates well though. Has a good first pass out of the zone. And he's just and you would never tell by talking to him because he's a very nice kid. He, presents very well, but on the ice, he wants to inflict pain. And you could just tell, even in practice, they had a good skate on Saturday. He's just looking for his next victim. And, You'll love to see it. Absolutely love to see it.
It's so odd to hear this about a Swedish defenseman
Smiling.
who shares a name with, of course. But here we are with EPD. The goaltender Ty Young. Boy, is he jittery in the net. And I don't know if that's because they had such a poor first period that he was really on edge. But there was a lot of what looked like nervous pent-up energy.
But he was good in
and look, Prince George Cougar last year, and there's a decision to make on Young, right?
Yeah, I to be like, there might be some nerves in there. Like you said, there is going to be. He is promoting himself right now. He could go back. He's a 20-year-old. Unfortunately, that starting position, it might have been taken over in Prince George by a very strong goaltender who might go in the first round this year. So by all accounts, his position might be stolen. So
I was talking to a friend of ours, a listener, Prince George Patrick, shout out, big Cougars fan, who said if he does get sent back, look for a trade. He'll probably wind up somewhere else in the WHL where he could be the unquestioned starter.
Or they send him to Kalamazoo.
Exactly. And that's sort of what I'm wondering if is going to happen. And so that's why he's promoting himself right now. So he's trying to show a
lot at stake. It kind of showed yesterday. Yeah.
But with that said, he also was very good behind the net. Like that game could have gotten out of hand pretty easily in that first couple minutes there. I think he made 13 saves in this first period, and some of them were pretty solid. And at the very end, he made one very good save to keep their lead intact. So as much as he was a little shaky at times, I also thought he did look pretty good as well.
Last question, our poll question.
One more review.
You got one more.
One wild card review.
Oh, wait.
Okay.
His stand. Yes.
What? No, I saw a stand at all.
No, not yours.
Oh,
Dave's got a stand here.
For Danila Klimovich?
No.
Okay. There's two of them. We might have two questions.
Ulrichsen.
Oh, yes. Okay, so two big guys.
Yeah.
The stocks are going in different directions. Is that fair?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, I've been trying very hard to give Klimovich the benefit of the doubt. Obviously I watched all Abbotsford games last year. Yes, he only had 4 points. He did play 24 games, but it's very important to note that in those 24 games, he didn't play much. You know, Colleton, you could just tell both sides just weren't there anymore.
Yeah.
He wasn't confident. Colleton didn't have confidence in him. So
Also very young, like Ratu.
he's also very young,
Yeah.
but the habits just continued this weekend. And, you know, you just see a lot of spin around, unconceded passes that he just hopes are going to hit a player. They look nice when they connect, but for the most part, it just goes to no one. And it's just very frustrating. And he is the perfect profile of a kid that you want at this tournament. 21 years old, trying to make a name for himself. And so you kind of hope that he would stand out a little more.
Like Ulrichsen.
Like Ulrichsen, who's only 19, and he just doesn't. So unfortunately,
And what's the future for Ulrichsen? What's his season like?
He's tough to peg. I would still consider him a long shot by, don't get it twisted. He's a 4th round pick, and he's coming over from Sweden, had his first year in Guelph last year, but it's hard not to love the package. He's 19 years old, 6'6". He's up to 237. Built like a linebacker.
But he'll be in Abbey though, right?
No, he won't be in
No?
Abbotsford this year. He'll be back in Guelph.
I think so.
Definitely. He's only 19, so he'll be back over there. But he should be given a nice promotion in terms of top 6 minutes. And the nice thing I love about him is he's versatile on the power play. He's got a shot. You can put him on the half wall, or you just pluck that big body right in front of the net, and he'll bang away.
Dare to dream, Canucks fans. 6'6", 237, 19 years old.
Yeah.
Can shoot. Can move a little bit too.
He's a skater.
That goal last night was beautiful.
He's got hands.
Really was. Really good.
He's got hands.
No. Our poll question. Moving on up to the big Canucks. Training camp getting going. We know the big focus this summer was the winger for Petty. Petey, they got it with DeBrusque. Who do you want to see on the other wing there? Dave, do you want to see Höglander? Do you want to see Sprong? Do you want to see Joshua or Garland? Somebody move their way up? Who do you want to see playing with DeBrusque and Pettersson this year?
I actually wouldn't mind to see Sprong. I wouldn't mind to see what he can do in there, at least for a couple stints. Let's see what it is in preseason. Maybe I'm not sure, but I wouldn't mind seeing what he can do. I mean, he's already proven that he can score, especially at even strength, which is what that line would need.
Yep.
And so I would love to see Sprong on that line personally.
Great stuff, buddy. Thank you for the time here today. It's been awesome hanging out this weekend. Enjoyed Penticton, and we'll be calling on you down the line here.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, guys. It's good to finally put a face to the podcast.
Yeah, first time we've met him in person. Dave Hall at Canucks Army.
Happy hour on Sekeres and Price. Today's beer of the day, Neighbourhood's Happy Place Juicy Pale Ale.
Sekeres and Price from Neighbourhood, downtown Penticton, in the Young Stars Classic Tournament. And, of course, 4 teams here, Blake. And joining us here tableside, he's covering the Calgary Flames for Barn Burner, Afterburner, our old friend Ryan Pinder.
Boys, how we doing?
Part of the Nation Network family.
Yeah, exactly. With your BC roots. Welcome back home, so to speak.
Amazing to be back in Penticton. It's been I think I brought my kids here 6 years ago. And prior to that, it's a decade. But 4 amazing years here and working with the V's. I remember the first Young Stars ever. I was working for the V's, and I think I ran into you covering it for the Canucks. And that might have been the first time we actually met in person. So way back.
Yes.
Blake,
in the broadcast booth, I think.
How many losses did you see with the V's? Like about 7, 8 in 4
4
years?
That's about 8.
Yeah.
You know what? It's funny. They won the league championship in old Penticton Memorial Arena, which is legendary.
Oh, really?
And feels more barn than arena these days.
In your first year? That was in the old one.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was Fred Harbinson's first year, the head coach, GM, and president now.
Yeah.
And then year 2, new ownership. They transitioned into the new building. They didn't win a championship for 3 years. So huge riots. I think they were burning
No, that was Peach Fest.
The season after that, they reeled off a 43-game win streak and won the national championship.
Really?
It's been they were surprisingly lean years for all the wins I saw.
Yeah. So come to Penticton, see a V's game. Good chance they win.
At the Young Stars, there's 4 teams here, and at any one given moment, 1 to 2 of those teams is going to struggle and is going to bring high-end prospects to this tournament. And Ryan, you are covering that team.
Yeah,
you get to cover
this guy right here.
You want to talk about deadline rentals? What else is going on this year?
Hey, if at any point during the season, you need a shoulder to cry on, anything like that, Blake and I have done these years. We've done a lot of these years.
I think there would be more tears in the fan base if this team hadn't liquidated the UFAs. Yeah. I mean, you go to 14 months ago, it was Tyler Toffoli, Michael Backlund, Chris Tanev, Noah Hannafin, Elias Lindholm, Nikita Zadorov. That's 6 UFAs.
Crazy.
And Oliver Shillington was like, well, he's going to re-sign anyway because the team's been so good to him and his mental health struggles. 7 pending UFAs. that Craig Conroy landed on his desk the moment he took GM job. And I think he's navigated it really well in terms of not letting assets expire for zero, with the exception of Shillington, who only left on a 1-year, $1 million deal to Colorado. And yeah, you're absolutely in a rebuild here. There's only 3 skaters left from the Battle of Alberta round 2 from 2022.
2022. Wow.
Anderson, and then you'd have the 2 line mates, Backlund and Coleman, and Dan Vladar, who is a backup, was there as well. That's it from that whole team. You know, it's wild.
Of course, our old friends Jacob Markstrom, Chris Tanev, no longer Flames. Tanev at the deadline, Markstrom over the course of the summer. What did you make of Jake's tenure as a Flame?
He had it was good or bad. I mean, there wasn't a mediocre year. He had 2 seasons ago. It looked like he had lost it, and they were going through his first pregnancy, then the birth of his first child, and seemingly the moment they left the hospital with a cute little Markstrom in mom and dad's arms, he was back to himself. But that wasn't until late in the spring. And then last year, I think he was top 3 in goals saved above expected.
He was.
And was phenomenal prior to the deadline when they deleted their best defensive pair in Hanifin and Tanev. Things got a little messier in front of him. He still finished right near the top of the league in goals saved above expected. And then there was the whole, I think he's going to get traded to New Jersey. He's waived, and it didn't happen. Wasn't quite the same after all that, but still an incredible year. And it just sort of was like good year, bad year. Good year is probably how you, I guess, account for the last 3 years. If he's right, New Jersey's a very good team because they had a bunch of injuries last year, and we love the talent they've got up front, obviously.
Wolf and Vladar is not a terrible tandem goalkeeping, except who's in front of them helping them. You talked about how messy it got after those 2 great defensemen left. I mean, there hasn't been much of a replenishment, has there?
Kevin Ball and Jake Bean are not Noah Hanifin and Chris Tanev.
Right.
And that's, and even, Miramanov is this intriguing former forward Russian that couldn't crack the top 6 in Vegas and has some skills, but we don't really know what he is. It's interesting. They also got Devin Coolian, who had the exceptional quotes with the Sharks last year. It's like, win or lose, we're all dying anyway, or something hilariously dark like that. So Cooley, Vladar, and Wolf have combined for 99 NHL starts. Combined.
Yeah.
Like not 100 amongst the 3 of them.
Wow.
And one of them is probably going to start in the American League. And it's like, okay, it's a fun couple names to look at, but no one has had the chance to hold the reins as a starter or even be in a platoon out of that group. So we'll see. And you make a point. Like it's not like, yes, here I go in to stop pucks behind the New Jersey Devils of the late 90s. Like, no, it's going to be leaky some nights.
Yeah, that's the problem. You have a promising young goaltender, but if you're not protecting him, he's going to be scrambling. It could be some long nights there for Calgary.
Yeah, I think there'd be a schedule of like, you don't want to overwork him, but I think almost sort of the mental break he might need. Like, give a guy a run, let another guy go in and have a run, because I just don't see this team having a lot of wins. It doesn't mean they'll be boring. I think they competed really hard in the, under Ryan Huska last year. They had a miserable start and then got all the way within a point of a playoff spot in mid-February before the, eventual exodus of all those free agents at the deadline. So I think they'll be an entertaining team to watch. They're just not good.
But how do you rebuild with the Kadri and Huberdeau contracts? How do you really do that?
Kadri at $7 million is what he should be making. It's the term that's a challenge. He'll turn 34 in October, and he's got 5 years left.
Yeah, crazy.
There's a 7-year max term UFA signing. And then Huberdeau just played year 1 of an 8-year deal that pays him $10.5 a season, which is substantially more than Sidney Crosby just signed for on a 2-year term. Jeez, what are you doing, guys? Brett Shelby's not here anymore.
If only Huberdeau had an affinity for the numbers 8 and 7,
That's right.
Yes. Well, even 5 and 4, maybe. I mean, it's not been good at all. His first half of the year, he was on a 33-point pace, and then the second half, 66. So you can see what end of the season Flames fans want replicated for the full year. But look, they're going to be very young, and they need to get some high-end young players. They were really weak on the blue line. They brought about, I'd say, 10 new defensemen into the system with the draft, the acquisitions at the trade deadline, free agency. That bolstered that position. They have 2 NHL centermen. 35-year-old Michael Backlund, soon to be 34-year-old Nazem Kadri. You have not got the rebuild moving until you draft an elite young centerman,
Mhm.
or you find a team in a pinch and somehow extract one. It's the hardest thing to do. Not a lot of Joe Thornton's move, if you know what I mean. It's incredibly rare when it happens. They need to bottom out so they can find their next franchise superstar. Perrick on the back end is going to be incredibly fun to watch, like a Erik Karlsson light type profile, points, defensively not great, but they don't have their star center. That's the job of the next 2 drafts where they've got 4 first rounders.
Is Perrick an NHL player this year?
No.
Okay. Junior player this year?
I just watch him in
game look. 9th overall pick this past year.
Yeah, and a guy that had 96 points on the blue line as a 17-year-old in the OHL. Like, he's going to go back and flirt with OHL records on the blue line, and the names that have been up there, like there's some Hall of Fame type guys that he'll be in the company of for an 18-year-old season in the O. But I just watch the puck battles and stuff. He's playing 3D chess, but he's doing it against men here, and it's only going to become older and better men when he returns to main camp. You can see the vision and the talent. It's oozing. But you've also seen egregious turnovers and trying to do too much, and that he's just physically not strong enough. I would think in a year he breaks camp with this team.
Well, if the top centerman is one of the hardest things to get or extract,
Yeah.
The second would be a top pair right shot defenseman, Rasmus Anderson, who is all of those things for the Calgary Flames and for anyone else. And there's already some, smoke about whether he's going to be moving on with 2 years left on his contract, Ryan.
2 years
What do you
left.
think?
Yeah, 2 years left at an incredibly reasonable number, because we always know it's not just, would this player fit in our team, but it's how do we get this damn salary in for all these contenders are dry humping the cap, trying to squeeze in new guys at the deadline. Rasmus makes $4.5-ish million, which is an incredible steal for a top pairing defenseman. This year and next year, you could theoretically sell 2 playoff runs with this player, eat half the salary. Like, what would a contending team that needs a right shot defenseman give you for 2 playoff runs of a guy with a prorated, essentially $2.5 million deal? Like, I'm thinking the Oilers could use that guy. Who couldn't use that guy? And if you pick up a guy making 2.5 with a third of the year left, like, you might only need $800,000 in cap space.
Canucks fans are already salivating over these players, and with the reason being that they swung 2 big trades with Calgary last year, right? With
Jim
Lindholm
Rutherford, Patrick Alvin, and Craig Conroy, they've got things done. Zadorov and the Lindholm one, I mean, I think Vancouver probably got the better of the Zadorov one. Chatting with Craig Conroy, we got a 40-minute sit down with him yesterday that's airing on our network today if you want to check that out. But he just said, look, like, you look back and you say, what would I do differently? Maybe we moved too soon on Zadorov, but he was the squeaky wheel. He was in Toronto, his agent saying he's the best defenseman on that team. He was the 5th best defenseman on the team. And, he was becoming a distraction. And at that point of the season, I think Craig Conroy said, maybe I could get a second for this guy at the deadline, but I'm going to get a 3rd and a 5th today because I got to get him out of here. It's not what I need in the room right now. There was a ton of noise around this team with all those free agents. So would he do that differently, or was the timing right? Canucks got the better of that deal, but the Lindholm deal is 5 parts, fellas. It's a 3rd rounder, it's a 1st rounder, it's Prstevich, it's Yermo, and Kuzmenko. If this guy scores 30 to 40 goals, they might be able to flip him for another Lindholm-like package.
That was my next question, Ryan, because 2 years ago with a team that wasn't going anywhere, and that was evident from the beginning of the season, Andrei Kuzmenko had a lot of latitude, particularly under Bruce Boudreau, and scored 39 goals.
First year in the league.
Yeah.
Like, that just doesn't happen.
I've already told Blake I'm going over on the Kuzmenko goals.
Right.
This year.
Don't know the total yet, but we're going the over.
Yeah.
That's like the
What's your
Devon
forecast?
A-chain. Just take the over until he gets injured.
They're going to fluff that pillow, though, aren't
Exactly.
they? Make sure that it's nice and
What's your forecast for Kuzmenko in year 2?
Top power play reps.
Oh,
all the offensive zone starts, playing with Kadri and someone with creative on the left wing, which would probably be like a Zeri type, a younger player that can find ice and space and time for him. And I think with a year left, you eat half of that. If there's a team struggling to score, is this not the perfect, we'll eat half, throw us some really nice assets?
Yep.
Now, he was a little... It was in and out with the Flames. He arrived, had a bit of a heater, then he disappeared for a couple of weeks. He was dealing with a minor injury. He had a viral thing going on. And then as the season closed out, he was awesome, and their power play was actually good. Not good enough to save Mark Savard's job, but close.
Yeah, well, he can score power play goals. That is one thing that we saw in Vancouver, and I believe it was plus 275 on 30 goals when we did the line last week. So I think I'm going over 30 goals.
I'm going to find that
on Kuzmenko.
Motorcycles are a thing here in
It's a big motorcycle town here in Penticton.
They invented here?
Honestly, if not Harley, then Davidson, I think, was from Penticton.
Right.
Before we leave Anderson, what's it? It's way too good to be true. So give us the downside of Rasmus Anderson. Why would you not surrender a top prospect and a top pick for that salary cap hit and that performance?
Well, I just think when you're talking about a deal, it's always what's the price. Everyone would like to have the player at a low price, but if someone's asking you for 2 firsts and a top end prospect, is that too much? For some organizations, it would be.
But what's the downside on the player? Like, why is he an $8 million player?
Well, because they locked him in right out of, a bridge, probably, I think it was. Yeah. And he was just starting to look like a top pair guy, not a 4 or 5 guy. And so, it's one of those things where you lock a guy in at long term and he gets better and the cap goes up. It only gets more and more attractive. I will say this, when the teams he's on have been competitive, he's been more engaged. Last year was not his best year, and the circumstances, as you
maybe
guys
the mind
painted,
wandered a little bit.
Yeah. And so I wonder about his appetite to re-sign. If there's, I think if he was, chatting with people, he's usually very transparent. He's just like, if they're going to be good, I'll stay and extend. I like it here. If they're not, I'm not signing up for, the last of my prime and into my 30s on a rebuild.
Yeah.
Our old friend Trent Cull is in the Flames organization. He's rocking an incredible mustache. Bristevich, Hunter, how's he looked here at Youngsters?
He's going to be an AHLer this year, so I think this is an important, he's leveled up. He's not playing against 16 to 20-year-old boys in Ontario anymore, and you've seen what he is as a player. Really good puck mover. So you've got some elusiveness in his game, skates well. First period in the first game, he looked a little shell-shocked. The whole team did. It was like, geez, they logged 2 in a couple minutes. Like, is this going to be 8-6 or 10-1? Or
cross game.
Yeah, and instead they settled in and played better. And like the rest of the team, he's looked much better since. But yeah, just throw him, Henry Muse, and Zane Perrick, all right shot defensemen that have a ton of intrigue and talent and poise. So we'll see how this shakes out down the road.
Last question here, and we saw the episode that you and Boomer did on the day that Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau passed away. I got to say, because needless to say, after he signs with Columbus, he's a bit of a villain amongst Flames fans, right? To see your community come together and tribute Johnny and Matthew like they did at the Saddle Dome was really quite touching. A thought or two on your community in Flames Nation this summer.
The organization did a fantastic job with that, and the community loved that kid because we all love underdog stories, and there's no greater underdog story than a 5'7" or 8" kid drafted out of Dubuque of the USHL that couldn't be 160 pounds soaking wet.
That's right.
The next level he'll be too small, and then he goes and torches college, and then there's the hand wringing and sweating over will he sign and come to Calgary, and he was saying, no, I just want to play with my brother another year at Boston College. Like, oh, they're going to say anything. But what you learned over the next decade was that family was the biggest thing for Johnny and Matthew, and his dad was a celebrity in Calgary. You'd see his sister, his mom. It was it felt wrong to see him in a Blue Jackets jersey. It was like, how did this happen? He's a Flame. He's always been a Flame. He'll forever be a Flame. And Meredith, his wife, said as much at the funeral, like he's forever a Flame. And it was never right. It just felt wrong that he left. But I think everyone loved that player and was so proud of that underdog representing that team. And you guys saw it in Vancouver. His first game ever was spring of 2014, game 82. He scores in his first ever NHL game wearing some weird training camp number. And then the next year as a full-timer, this Bob Hartley run team that was only a couple of years into a rebuild after Jerome and Bouwmeester and Kiprusoff all left, they make the playoffs and shock the Canucks in round 1. Yep. And it was like, holy crap, this little guy is a star.
And he was so much fun to watch.
Yeah. Yes.
The skill set just jumped off the screen, jumped off the ice.
One of the few guys that could really dazzle you.
Yeah,
like, it wasn't just about counting
yeah.
stats. He actually entertained you. So
yeah, it was mesmerizing at times.
In Calgary, you watched sort of Jerome McGinley go from superstar down to star and very good player. And the rosters were old. They weren't going to be a playoff team. It took too long for the team to realize that. They turned him into a pile of assets that amount to nothing rather than sell high on a guy a few years earlier. And it it was disheartening to watch that team because it was all these guys that just weren't as good as they used to be. And Johnny came in, and anytime he touched the puck in that first year, it'd be, you could hear like people breathing and oohing and awing with like, what's he going to do now? Because I know it's 1-on-3, but he's going to do a button hook in the zone. Someone's going to be wide open, and we're all going to say, how did you see that happen?
Yep. Great stuff. Thank you for this.
Good to see you guys.
The rest of your time here.
Thank you.
Fine
Appreciate
Pinder,
it.
everyone.
The Vancouver Canadians are back at the Nat. Catch fireworks, giveaways, and Friday nooners all spring and summer long. Get your tickets at CanadiansBaseball.com.
Sekeres and Price from Neighbourhood in Penticton. You can text us 778-402-9680. Email live at sekeresandprice.com. Well, the BC Lions lay an absolute egg Friday night at BC Place against the Argos. 2-game winning streak. Nathan Rourke, everything looked like it was back on track. They fall behind in this game early to Toronto, and they just don't ever forge any kind of a challenge.
Disappointing.
Rick Campbell has to be absolutely steaming mad about this because this is the second time this year that they've played really poor football heading into the bye week, almost as if guys were already looking forward to their off week.
Vernon Adams, too, was given a chance to try to right the ship, and not even he could. So all three quarterbacks end up seeing action.
33-17, the Argonauts win it. Nathan Rourke replaced after halftime by VA. This after going 6 of 12 for 110 yards. He did run for a touchdown. Rick Campbell explaining, quote, I thought the way our team was playing, we needed a spark, and we never got it. No, not until Chase Bryce throws a late touchdown in this game. Alexander Hollins, the star receiver, hurts a shoulder, and that looks like a multi-week injury. Looks like the bye week isn't going to be enough time for him. We'll see about Gary Peters, the defensive back, Christian Covington, the big defensive lineman. Both of those guys get nicked, and worse than all that, we talked about it all last week. This was an opportunity to move into first place in the West Division, right? And force Winnipeg to win next week in Edmonton. Well, failed to secure first. You're 7-7. Just 4 games left to right the ship, Blake. At best, you're looking at an 11-7 Lions season. And boy, we thought we were in for way better than
5-1.
5-1. They got Hamilton a week from Friday at BC Place. And again, we'll be spectators this weekend, hoping to see the Edmonton
I just don't know what their personality is anymore.
No, that's the other thing, too.
Like, what are they?
Yeah. No, it was really, really a difficult watch Friday for the Leos. Vancouver Canadians lose their Northwest League Championship Series 3-1 to Spokane. It was a walk-off loss in Game 4 that ended the season. All 4 games in this series decided by 1 run. It was really terrific baseball. And look, the better team won. Spokane was 20-8 against the Seas going into this postseason series. They're just a loaded team at this level, but a terrific season of baseball out at the Nat. It's a tremendous second half for the Seas to get to the playoffs.
So great.
Our thanks to Alan Bailey, Walter Cosman, Tyler Zickel, and everyone over there at the Vancouver Canadians for an outstanding season. Of course, you got the new facility opening down the right field line next year at the Nats. Will be a different look to the ballpark. And of course, they're a very popular ticket in the summer. Get your season tickets now. Go to CanadiansBaseball.com.
And the picnic area is going to be even better next year with a little bit of elevation underneath it down the right field line.
Yep.
So it'll be great.
CanadiansBaseball.com for updates as well over the course of the offseason. Well, let's talk about some good news. An outstanding performance from Vancouver Whitecaps FC Saturday at BC Place. You called the game. They win 2-0 over San Jose. They score a beautiful goal, and it's Stuart Armstrong opening his account as a Vancouver Whitecap to make it 2-0.
Yeah, I mean, the only complaint about the match would be that it should have been 5-0. And the goalkeeper for San Jose, Danielle, was just unbelievable. So it was only a 1-0 lead late, which is a little bit concerning. And the Quakes did score an offside goal, which might have scared fans for a brief moment, but it was clearly offside, gets reeled back. And then Stuart Armstrong comes on. People were wondering if the two Scotsmen would have chemistry. And Matt, it looked like they were in the schoolyard back at home. It was instantaneous chemistry. and they just sliced through San Jose. They scored one. It was a gorgeous one for Armstrong. They could have had more. And this is all done without Brian White. Remember what it would look like to have Picot, White, Armstrong, and Gold, not to mention the supporting cast of Ali Ahmed and Adekubi in there. I mean, dare to dream again. No Andres Kubas for that game, too. So, honestly, it could allow yourself to be excited dreaming here.
Vanni Sartini was effusive in his praise after the match. He said the time for hiding ourselves is over, that he really thinks that this is a team that can make some noise in the MLS playoffs. He said of the 36 competitive matches they played this year, and of course that's involving
Canadian Championship
and other tournaments,
League Cup.
He said they've only been the second best team on 2 occasions. That's how well he thinks his team has played this year. He credited Pedro Vite with a master class on Saturday.
Yeah,
he said it was a master class from Vite in the midfield. Look, we talked about the range of scenarios on Friday with given the out-of-town scoreboard. The Caps remain in 6th place here because the results around them. Of course, they still have games in hand on everybody in the West outside of LAFC. They got a makeup game to play with LAFC later in the schedule. Big one Wednesday in Houston because the Houston Dynamo are the team that are chasing Vancouver. And look, you want to finish top 7 because if you finish 8th, you're in a play-in game.
Yeah, they've got the world as their oyster here with the games played column, and we'll let the bikes go. Again, this is not a rarity in Penticton.
Big motorcycle town.
Big motorcycle town. I mean, now with Real Salt Lake being reeled in by the rest of the field, Whitecaps could be a 3rd best team in the conference.
They could.
Never mind top 4. They could be top 3. And then if they can get that long-awaited first-round win, maybe there's an outside chance that there's another upset and they retain home pitch advantage for the second round. So
big
we'll see.
Week, 2 road games in Houston and into LA.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
got to split at least.
And certainly want to get the game Wednesday against Houston. Make sure you got a little breathing room as you try and move yourself up the ladder in the MLS West. We sat here at Neighbourhood and watched an outstanding Seahawks-Patriots game on Sunday morning. Yeah, the Seahawks going east in that 10 a.m. window. That has not been a comfort zone for them over the years, but a come-from-behind overtime victory over a New England team that got a win in Week 1. Geno Smith with 327 yards and a touchdown. The Seahawks come back to Lumen. They host Miami on Sunday, and the big question will be, with or without Tua, right? They could be getting Skylar Thompson, a backup quarterback with the Dolphins.
Has to be without.
And a chance to go 3-0 on this young season where the Rams are in disarray after losing a couple of games and where you've got a 49ers team that is looking at Christian McCaffrey being out long-term now. So suddenly 2 weeks into the season, and I think all the glass half full optimistic outlooks for the Seahawks are coming into clearer focus.
And get them while you can. I think the BC Lions have told us not to get too excited about your football record too early. But, man, if they can start 3-0 with the division in a bit of disarray, unexpected disarray, it'll feel like an even better record than 3-0. You know, it'll feel like it'll last longer. So, hey, they've got some balance. It's a balanced team. I don't think either side is a juggernaut. They're not the best defense in the league. They're not the best offense in the league, but they're capable on both sides of the ball. And
the pass rush yesterday, Hall and Williams really got after the quarterback yesterday as that game went along. And a good gritty win on the road when really, you know, they were good early and then they sort of stalled out for a good part of the game, particularly the third quarter. But they made the plays when they were needed.
And Geno's proved himself now to be a comeback quarterback. The Seahawks fans have graduated from one of the best in history in Russell Wilson to he had 5 comeback wins last year.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing that you love about this is that Walker didn't play, right? Like the whole idea with Geno is that, they need Geno to, you know, they need a running game to help support Geno. I mean, Charbonnet was game yesterday, but New England was all over the running game. They basically said, Geno Smith, go beat us.
Yeah.
And Geno Smith beat him. So great work by Coach McDonald, who's now 2-0, and his staff. And the Seahawks with San Francisco losing to Minnesota in what was a wild and crazy game. So a lot of good things right now for the Seahawks in the 12s. Poll question results from Fridays. Does Jonathan Lekramaki play an NHL game this season? Yes or no? What did the people say, Blake Price?
Oh gosh, realists or optimists? Who won the order of the day?
It's an optimistic time of year.
All right, so yes, he does.
78% said yes. Dino Bug, nope. Let him develop for a year. The only change would be if he's absolutely dominant in the AHL, which is possible.
Or as we said, if we're taking the poll question literally, like he might get a token game or two at the end when they're resting regulars, right?
Yeah, Hassan and Burnaby. One game, yes. Don't expect an extended stretch. He'll either get a game or two to start the season or get a call-up late season due to injury. We saw a lot of that. He'll get a cameo, just not an extended stretch. Johnny Down Under says he's the wild card, and he is kind of a wild card. Like if he were to develop and be an NHL player this year, Blake, wow, does that change some of the outlook of the Vancouver
Go
Canucks?
back to Ryan Pinder talking about Johnny Gaudreau's rookie season. Like they did not expect that, right? So,
and then Jay says yes, because he will be taking Besser's spot on the wing after Besser is traded in a package for a top 4D at the deadline.
I mean, I think it's a good take.
I've played the scenario out in my mind as
I have
well,
too.
that if you're not re-signing Brock Besser this summer, and they did not, they want to see more, and you're looking at him becoming an unrestricted free agent, do you make a move to change the balance of your team and see if you can get that elusive right shot top 4 defenseman? And look, these things are related, right? Like if Lekramaki shows that he can be a player this year, you have a lot more license to make that sort of deal.
I think Garland and Besser become chips because not because they're bad players or even bad contracts right now. Right now, it's about the future in terms of Besser and his contract hit, and it's all about just changing where you're strong. So if either Lekramaki or one of the new signings, pardon me, what if Heinen's got 20 goals?
That's it. Yeah. I mean, we have talked a lot about robbing Peter to pay Paul sort of moves and trades that the Canucks have made over the years. If Lekramaki's a player, then all of a sudden, I think you're dealing from a position of depth and strength on the wing to try and address the hole on defense. So
we'll see.
Very exciting.
Good problem to have when you got 2 wingers scoring.
Problem to have, and really, it's not resigned to Lekramaki. Like if R.C. Baines were to be a player this year,
that's what I'm saying. Any of the depth wingers shows promise, it gives you license to make that deal.
Errors and omissions from Friday's program. We had a bit of a late start on YouTube. It was being tricky in terms of loading up our show, and we should have specified Vancouver Canucks in the poll with Lekramaki because, of course, the AHL team, they're named Canucks as well. All right. We're going to be joined here tableside. She is the co-founder of Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighbourhood Brewing, Foolish Winery, Yellow Dog Spirits, Melinda Coghill, one of our hosts here in Penticton each and every year that we come up for Young Stars. Thank you again for such great hospitality again this year, Melinda.
Well, thank you for being here.
Tell us about this spot right here, because it has really rejuvenated downtown Penticton, the corner of Winnipeg and Westminster Neighborhood.
Well, we built this building in 2020, right before the pandemic happened. And we think it's a very big iconic piece of Penticton now. It's a very major milestone corner where lots of people are walking up from the beach, which is 2 blocks away, or driving through the main part of town to get to Main Street. It's a beautiful spot. It's very welcoming. We're very proud to call this place home.
And it is rocking during Young Stars weekend. Let me tell you, it has been very, very busy here with a lot of luminaries. From
even on a Sunday night, at a brewery. Wouldn't think it was great last night. And I mean, this must be a fun week for you guys, knowing that there will be a little extra injection. And there's always something going on, whether it's dragon boats or jazz festivals or whatever. There's always something in September. It's still part of your key season, but a little extra injection doesn't hurt, does it?
Yeah, no, definitely. Having Young Stars here is a big influx for us, and then the training camp that's coming up. That's definitely a big draw for people to come and see us up here at Neighbourhood and the other locations in Penticton. So yeah, we're super proud to be able to host and to show everyone our hospitality and what we got.
Now, your first brand to join us on this show was officially Yellow Dog. We're at Neighbourhood. Yellow Dog was the first brand associated with this show. And I'm looking over to my right now, and I see a big yellow dog staring back at me, saying opening soon. You've already got the dog park patio open. I went and enjoyed a burger and a beer there yesterday. It was fabulous. A big fire pit, keeping you warm in the shoulder seasons. But there's going to be an indoor facility there in how long?
Soon. Very soon.
Yeah.
Mike will kill me if I give an actual
measured
date.
in weeks, though.
Yes. It's imminent this time for real.
Yeah.
It's imminent. Yeah, we're super proud to be opening Yellow Dog 2 up in Penticton. Port Moody location down in Yellow Dog. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary.
And staying put, yes.
Which it's our, that's our baby. That's where we started this whole adventure. And but we've been under construction for a while now at Yellow Dog Penticton, and things are moving quick now. Our kitchen's installed. We are working on the interior space. We will be open in 2024.
Excellent. And you can bring your dog to the dog park patio down there, which is part of the charm of it.
Yeah, you definitely can. We've been very lucky to be able to have that backyard patio space open to be able to accommodate Yellow Dog fans up in Penticton for the time being, while we get the interior space up and running, which is soon. So it's very
exciting. If you've never been to the wine village in Oliver, where they have Foolish Winery, put that on your Okanagan list. What an incredible space.
Yeah, it's it's a short jaunt from here. It's about a 30-minute drive from downtown Penticton. Beautiful drive through Lake Country, and it's a really unique concept out there at the District Wine Village. There's multiple wineries that are out there. We have Foolish Wine, which is part of the Yellow Dog Beverage Company family, and then we also have Yellow Dog Spirits, which is our distillery. So that is also located down there. And we have a second location of Neighbourhood down there. So Neighbourhood Outpost. So we got a brewery, a distillery, and a winery that's located at the District Wine Village. Plus there's a whole bunch of other wineries out there too. So it's kind of like a one-stop shop.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And for many years now, Melinda, you guys have been big supporters of the BC SPCA with your Make My Pet a Yellow Dog Brewing Star. The campaign is on. Tell us all about it and how they can help out.
Yeah, campaign is on, going strong. I just got an update this morning from the SPCA crew, and we have broken $146,000.
Excellent.
We have raised so far with this year's campaign. We have over 2,500 entries. Which is phenomenal. We currently have a golden retriever in top spot. His name's King Buddy.
Okay.
And then the next 3 spots are dogs this year. Last year, we had a cat that actually won the top spot.
The cat people showed out last year. They really did.
They did. Mickey was our first, and I think his supporters kind of put us over the edge there with some big fundraising at the end to make sure that he won, which was amazing to have a cat on a Yellow Dog beer can.
Yeah,
that's funny.
But
we don't discriminate here.
No.
We don't discriminate. No,
No.
definitely. There's a bunch of cats in the contest. Obviously a bunch of dogs. Some unique entries. We have a pig this year. We have a hedgehog. We have a tortoise. So really, we don't discriminate. So people can enter their pets in, and
My cat thinks it's a dog, so I think that that it makes sense. There are hybrids out there.
There is hybrids, definitely. Yeah, no, it's one of our biggest supporting events that we do for the SPCA every year, and this is our 3rd year running this contest. So we're super excited to be a part of this again, and we have 7 days left in the contest. Voting ends on Sunday, September 22nd at 8:00 Vancouver time. Okay. So if you're on the fence and you're thinking that you don't want to do it, or I may not get enough votes, here's the kicker. So the first 3 fundraisers will have a guaranteed spot on a beer can.
Oh, wow.
The 4th fundraiser, you only have to raise $100. You only have to raise $100, and then it's going to be a random draw of everyone
Okay.
who has raised $100, and that random draw will earn the 4th label spot.
Where are we directing them to on voting?
So if they can go to www.spca.bc.ca, they will be able to access all the information about the contest and how to get their pet online and how to collect votes and everything like that. So it's it's super exciting. 7 more days to go. We're really hoping for a big push at the end to raise as much money as possible for those puppies.
And we'll have a link available.
Yes, so
on
we'll
YouTube.
get it linked in the YouTube and in the podcast description as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Jacob. Help me out with this. You have a pet tortoise. It's going to outlive you.
Yeah, you have to
will the tortoise to heirs.
Yeah.
Do I have that right?
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
every tortoise is pretty much going to outlive it.
There's a story out
unless
there
they
right
get
now.
sick or something, right?
Yeah. Somebody's got a famous tortoise. I forget. I just read a story recently about this. Anyhow,
We'll see how the tortoise does.
I hope a tortoise wins.
with the Yellow Dog Make My Pet, a Yellow Dog Brewing store. Melinda, thank you so much for all the hospitality for
Yes,
joining us here
amazing.
today. We absolutely love our annual trip to Penticton. It's because of all the great people we get to connect with.
Well,
Thank you.
we love having you. So thank you so much for your support as well.
And thanks to everybody for joining the show today, connecting with us. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Follow on social. That's Twitter, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. Live 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, weekdays on many of those platforms. And please do support the community sponsors like Yellow Dog, Neighbourhood, and Foolish Winery that we keep telling you about. Keep it local.
Cheers.
Hey, everybody, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.